Namaste and welcome to Karmic Astrology channel. Today we have with us Michael Reed from Pulse of the Universe. Welcome, Michael, to Karmic Astrology channel.
Thank you for having me on again, Prasad.
Yes.
Thank you.
I have noticed that you are working on Academy. What is that all about? Can you just tell us briefly about the Academy?
You know, it's interesting because I started with this idea of just wanting to teach beginners courses there, because what I found in teaching Vedic astrology to beginners in a webinar environment is it's really hard to do because you have people at so many different levels. So I decided that I would start this online video course academy with quizzes and everything for people, so that they could like get certification in Vedic astrology and practice fundamentals. And there is a fundamental class that's still up there. But once I got into it, I started recognizing I wanted to do this with all of my previous video courses, right? So I've been in the process of putting all of those video courses up. I've got like a few lessons of each, like of the Jaimini course. And I think there's 2 lessons with that one. There's a concrete prediction course there. I think I've got 1 lesson for that. A Varga course, there's 1 lesson of that. I'm getting ready to put a new one up this week. There's a Nakshatra course that's there. There's 1 lesson of that. But also, you know, if people are interested in the academy, if people want to schedule a consultation with me through my website, anybody who schedules a consultation with me gets a free 3-month membership to the Pulse of the Universe Academy, where they can take all the courses. And that's good for 3 months just for doing a consultation. And so they can find that at my link, which I'm sure you'll put below.
Yes, I will definitely put the link into the description so that people can.
So thanks for asking about the academy, because
yes, I've just noticed that. Yeah. Okay, so we have questions around Rahu and Ketu.
Yes.
Can you help us understand what exactly is Rahu and Ketu? Because what are Rahu and Ketu? Can you just
Sure, yeah. So let's make this simple for people. In order to talk about Rahu and Ketu, it's probably good for us to talk about the concept of the ascendant or the lagna in astrology, and the descendant or the 7th house in astrology. Okay, so just briefly about that, like the lagna or the ascendant is the sign that's on the eastern horizon at the time you're born. So that marks the individual, their perspective on life, right? So the sign that's on the western horizon at the time that you're born, that's the 7th house. So individuals in life, we're always going from the 1st house to the 7th house. If you look at the horizon's always beyond you. You can never fully reach it. Once you reach it, there's a new horizon that's there, right? And so you're just continually going towards new and new horizons. So I bring that into the equation because Ketu and Rahu really function like the ascendant and descendant of our karma. Okay? So Ketu represents that perspective that we're coming from. Rahu represents that perspective that we're moving to. But what these points are astronomically, and this is pretty profound too if you think about it, because if we understand the sun relating to the Atman, or the soul of the individual, right? And the moon relating to the manas, or the sensory mind of the individual, right? So the path of the sun as it goes from solstice to solstice is called the ecliptic. The path of the moon as it moves around the earth moves in about a 5-degree difference from that plane of the sun. So that point where the path of the moon crosses the path of the sun when it's going north is the north node, or Rahu. And that spot where the path of the moon crosses the path of the sun as the moon's going back down south is the south node, or Ketu. So they're points where the path of the sun, the soul, and the path of the moon, our manas or sensory mind, cross each other. And they create these points on the environment, which are the points where eclipses happen. So there's something that's pretty deep that's going on about that, because you have the connection between the soul and the sensory mind. right?
Yes.
That's continually happening with that, and that's what creates the nodes, also known as Ketu and Rahu. So as we were saying, Ketu represents that perspective that we're coming from. Rahu represents that perspective that we're moving towards. When most people begin to understand Ketu and Rahu, they understand Ketu as being related to past karma, which it is that, but it's a lot more than that too. And they understand Rahu as being related to what we're needing to do to resolve that past karma. And it's that on a certain level too, but I like to take it a little bit deeper because it's also very relevant within this particular lifetime. Because Ketu is going to represent that thing that we're familiar with, okay? And Rahu is going to represent that thing that we're unfamiliar with. Ketu represents the thing that we think that if we do this thing, it's going to make our life okay. So I'll give you an example. So let's say somebody has Ketu in the 12th house, and for instance, in previous lifetimes, maybe they were like imprisoned or something, right? So that's a 12th house factor. Or maybe in this lifetime they were imprisoned. So they become accustomed to confinement and isolation, right? So they fall back on that concept of isolation in order to deal with life's challenges. So, like for instance, if they had been in prison, they know how to live like imprisoned or in confinement really well. And that's why like sometimes people who were released from prison, they have a hard time adjusting because it's something completely foreign and different to them. And so Ketu 12th house, for instance, people may have lived in an ashram or something like that, or lived alone in isolation. Well, part of what they're needing to learn is you can't always go into that space of retreat in order to deal with life's problems. Sometimes you have to confront them head on, which is what Rahu in the 6th would teach them. So where people get Ketu and Rahu wrong, I think, though, is they begin to kind of think that we just need to do Rahu. And that's not the case.
Yes.
We need to have a balance between the two. So in short, it goes a little bit deeper than that with Ketu and Rahu too, because Ketu relates to what I like to call the security paradigm, the thing that we do that we think is going to make our life okay. Interestingly enough, let's explain where and when that dynamic is set up. So when we're like infants, right? And even to a certain degree when we're toddlers, when we do something that our parents really approved of, we feel pleased. We go, wow, my security is like insured. Like my parents are happy with me. They're going to take care of me. Then if we do something that makes our parents upset and we see a different side of our parents, we subconsciously think that our survival is threatened.
Yes. And so we always at our best.
Exactly. And so we'll do these things in early childhood to get that approval, because we've learned that the other things bring disapproval, and so create a level of insecurity. And so a pattern gets set within the individual by their parents that they're born into, but that's a pattern that's brought over from a previous lifetime, you see? And that's why they had those parents and they were born into that family, and they're needing to learn how to develop beyond that as well.
Okay.
I just need a quick drink.
Yeah, sure. I have a question, like, when we are following the Rahu, because Rahu and Ketu are exactly opposite from each other.
Correct. Yes.
Then why there is a drive only for the Rahu when we feel secure in the realm of Ketu? Why we are driven towards the Rahu?
Good question. I'll give a simple answer to that. Interestingly enough, Ketu is related to the Meena avatar of Vishnu, right? The Meena avatar of Vishnu, there's an interesting story about the Meena avatar of Vishnu, where there was a sage who was by a body of water, right? And suddenly he heard this voice go, help me, you gotta help me, right? And he looked and he saw that there was a fish, like, in this small pond, right? And the fish was going, you've got to help me because these other fish are going to eat me up. And so, the sage felt sorry for the fish and he scooped the fish up and took him to a bigger pond near his hermitage. And so few days went by and he went to check in on the fish, and the fish had grown. He was getting too big for the
Yes.
pond, right?
Yes.
So he had to get the fish out of that pond and take the fish to a lake, and eventually the fish outgrew the lake and had to take him to the river. And finally he outgrew the river, and the sage had to take him to the sea, and the fish said, "Oh no, don't put me in the sea, all the other fish will eat me up." And the sage recognized that this wasn't an ordinary fish, and it was actually Vishnu. So the idea, Meena avatar relates to Ketu, because what happens is with whatever Ketu is related to, we will eventually outgrow things. That's why, interestingly enough, people quite often will go, "Oh, I got into a relationship with somebody in my Ketu dasha, and we have Ketu, their Rahu's on my Ketu, and my Ketu's on their Rahu," and they go, "This must be my soulmate." No, that's a karmic connection, and that relationship might end after your Ketu dasha is over with. Because once the karma's done, Ketu will go, "Okay, well, what's next?" Because Ketu is always needing to expand, because it's the area of our life that we think is going to give us stability and think it's going to give us security or a sense of familiarity. But that sense of familiarity eventually becomes too confining for us. And that's when Rahu begins to pull and goes, "No, you can't stay there anymore." I'll give you a prime example. I had a client once upon a time who was studying for their bar exam. Okay. And they flew back to their parents' house because it would give them some time alone to study for their bar exam to become a lawyer. And while they were there, their parents kept treating them the same way they treated them when they were a little child, right? So going to that place of retreat gave them the space to study, but it also was too confining for them. And interestingly enough, they were in Ketu dasha when this was happening. And that's how Ketu plays itself out. And Rahu will always come in and go, "No, we need to pull you in this direction for a while." But then what will happen with Rahu is things with Rahu will become too wild for the person or too intense. And so they can't integrate it all. So they need a space of retreat to go back into to integrate the experiences that they're going through.
Okay. So Ketu is like an ascendant, you said, right?
It is kind of like the ascendant. It's like the ascendant of your karma.
And Rahu is like the seventh house. And that's why seventh house is also about the foreign things.
Seventh house is foreign countries, and Rahu relates to foreign countries, both of them. Because the seventh house is the reason the seventh house relates to foreign countries, is the seventh house is the horizon, which is always just beyond us and always unknowable, because even when we get to it,
there is something beyond
changing.
that.
Yeah,
always.
Exactly. And Rahu is a similar way.
Okay. So can you just help us with what is the importance, what is the significance of the Rashi of the Rahu and Ketu? Because as we discussed, this is ascendant. So the sign of the ascendant becomes important and its Lord. So what is the significance of the zodiac sign for Rahu and Ketu?
Well, sure. And just to clarify, Ketu and Rahu are kind of like the ascendant and descendant of your karma too. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I'm just going to add a question to it. Can you just tell me that if I have Rahu in the sign of Aries and Ketu in the sign of Libra,
what would it be like? Yeah.
What it'd be like? Because opposite of it, like that's what I have understood from. Yeah.
So here are some simple things. Well, first of all, in answering the beginning of that question, the Rashi is very important, because what Rashis do is they define the field of existence within which something operates, which eventually becomes further fine-tuned to create the area of life that it's going to impact, right? So the Rashis will determine a certain manner in which the drama of Ketu and Rahu will play out. And the dispositors of those Rashis become very important too. And you can know a lot about a Ketu and Rahu placement simply by knowing the dispositor, because the dispositor, say for instance, if you've got Rahu in Scorpio and Rahu in Aries, they're going to behave similarly on some levels. and different on others because they both have Mars as their dispositor, right? And if you've got Ketu in Libra or Ketu in Taurus, those are going to behave similarly as well because they both have Venus as their dispositor. But then the actual way the sign plays out also creates some difference. So in regards to what you were saying with Ketu in Libra, well, first of all, when Ketu is in a sign that's connected to Venus, one of the things that begins to happen with that is the person begins to feel that if things can't be done easily, then it must not be meant for me, right? So I'll give you an example. Let's say, for instance, that placement with Ketu in Libra relates somehow to the person's relationships. The person will likely feel if a relationship isn't easy, then it's wrong. Or if a job isn't easy, if it's a job, then it's wrong, right? But that's not always the case, obviously, right? So Ketu in a Venus-related sign wants things to be easy. But what they begin to find is that, and then you can add the Ketu in Libra layer to it and also say they want things to be easy and things will only have value to them if they're going to flow smoothly and be easy. Or that's what they think. This is only valuable if things are easy for me, right? And so then if you have, what begins to happen with that is the person begins to find that they have other desires besides those desires that are easy, right? Only they have a hard time equating that in their mind because they go, yeah, but if I go for that, it's going to create this tension in my life. And if I go for that and it's creating tension in my life, then maybe that's wrong. So I don't know if that's something that I should do. Maybe that doesn't hold something of value for me. Ketu and Libra will also consider their actions intensively before they take action, right? Because they want to consider the value of that action. They want to consider, if I produce this cause, what is the effect it's going to have? And is that effect something that is worthwhile? Is that effect something that's going to create stress in my life, right? Because they just want things to flow smoothly. But in wanting things to flow smoothly, a lot of their desires go unfulfilled. And usually that relates to an early childhood environment where, you know, they were kind of taught that things should be easy, right? Don't go down this path. Don't go be a doctor because that path is too hard for you. Don't go be, a airline pilot because that path is too hard for you. Instead, do this. And so they get set in their minds, oh, I can't do this, or oh, I can't do that because that will be too hard. But they still have that desire. And that's when Rahu in Aries comes in. And Rahu in a Mars sign, I should say, one of the things that it's trying to teach the person is sometimes if you want something in life, you have to fight for it.
Wow.
You have to have a hunger for it, and you have to fight for it, okay? And sometimes if you want something in life and you want something to happen, you don't have time to turn things over endlessly in your mind to see if it's going to work out okay. Sometimes you have to act, and you have to act in the moment, right? And if you can't act in the moment, then that experience is going to pass you by. So if you really want it, you have to be willing to sacrifice that comfort that things should be easy and go into that realm of experiencing, yeah, that was a challenge to get that, but that was a worthwhile challenge. Yeah, maybe in taking those actions, I did some things along the way that weren't as refined as I would have liked for them to have been, but still those actions that I took brought a different action. So ultimately, they're needing to recognize that when you can consider things and consider the value of things, hey, that's great. But sometimes situations call for quick action. They call for impulsive action and headstrong action. So sometimes you have to do that too. So learn how to, in the moment, consider things and immediately act.
Okay.
Based upon that. That's how they can put those two opposites together.
I have one question. Like,
sure.
This is frustrating to tackle with these two at the same time, or any Rahu Ketu energies, right?
Exactly. Yes.
So there will be all the pairs like 2, 8, 3, 9, 6, 12, 4, 10.
Exactly.
But how exactly is going to who is going to win in this? Like you said about the Ketu in the Libra sign, they want the easy path as they are, used to it from the childhood. But at the same time, Rahu will drive them to be individualistic. So who is going to win this? Will their Ketu make them be in their shell, or will Rahu will pull them out and will allow them to take that initiative? Who will win this?
Here is the answer to that, which is tricky and which people perhaps need to hear but may not want to hear.
Okay.
The fact of the matter is while you're incarnated here on the planet, neither of those planets will win. And you will continually go from one end of the spectrum back and forth to the other, because that's what they're meant to do, because they're meant to make you evolve and make you grow. But within that, sometimes you have natural tendencies. And so I'll explain what I mean. So for instance, if you had Ketu in Libra, and Ketu is in Libra with Venus, the Ketu Libra pattern will be hard to break out of, because there's a really strong pull to Ketu in that instance, right?
Okay.
So it will keep pulling the person to that, right? They will keep going, well, yeah, I keep trying to act on impulse, but it's just not me, and it's next to impossible. And every time I do that, it just doesn't work out. And so they'll keep getting pulled to that, but it doesn't mean that Ketu is winning, because Rahu will still pull, because really they're one and the same. And we experience them as duality because we have duality inside of ourselves, you see.
Okay. Like if Rahu Mahadasha is going on, Rahu will be powerful?
Rahu will be very powerful, but from my experience, what will also happen is the person will still get pulled back into Ketu. And so for people who are going through Rahu dashas and perhaps have had this experience, Rahu dasha will take you for long periods of time where you're like, things are just getting crazy and ridiculous. And then you'll have those spare moments where suddenly you're kind of like, whew, I'm coming up for air for a little bit, and I'm not just treading water. And that moment that you're coming up for air, that's probably Ketu pulling you back to that sense of familiarity, so you can gain perspective on the experience and integrate the experience, which is eventually what brings you liberation, which is why Ketu relates to liberation. Because without either of those, the other one's not going to be able to act, because they're one and the same. Yeah.
Okay. Can you just explain another combination, like if I have Rahu in the sign of Cancer and Ketu in the sign of Capricorn?
Good. Yeah, let's do that. And if you have a house interest after that to add,
yes, I have. Yes, I have.
But let's do the Rahu and Cancer, Ketu and Capricorn. That is, for me, one of the most humorous placements as an astrologer to interact with, I should say. And I'm going to explain why here in a moment.
So, yes, please. Yeah.
Ketu in Capricorn needs to have a structure. Okay? I'll explain why here in a moment, but they need to have a structure in their life. They need to feel like, I can do this, that, and the other thing practically, right? And everything will work out okay. And what's difficult, or interesting, I should say, about counseling people with this placement is you will go into telling them what's going on, and you'll go into telling them, well, you need to kind of be emotionally adaptive, and they'll go, please tell me the steps so I can know how to do that. And they're going right back into Ketu and Capricorn and doing it over and over again. You see what I'm saying? Because they need to have
that disciplined Capricorn energy is their security paradigm, which is holding them to have that steps. Okay.
Exactly. But kind of why the reason they're doing that is because, so now we need to really go into the trauma that kind of creates this. So when you have Ketu in Capricorn or Ketu in Aquarius, there will be some similarities, and that similarity is Saturn. So when there is a Ketu placement in either of those rashis, it's likely that one of two things happen in the person's early childhood. They either grew up in a family where money was tight, there was very little money, very little in terms of resources, and everything was constantly about survival. Okay. Or they grew up in a household where one of their parents was so immensely focused on money, right? So they grow up learning that the important thing in life is the fulfillment of basic animal needs, like the place to live, the money to pay your bills, the money to eat, all those things. Those are the only important things in life. And so they begin to develop that understanding. But of course, we're not just animals. We don't just need those things. We equally need emotional fulfillment.
Emotional.
And we need to feel that we have our emotional needs met and things like that. That's when Rahu and Cancer begins to come into the equation. But what has happened with those people is because of that trauma that was there. And that trauma can be one or either of those things. It can be the lack of nourishment in their environment, or it can be that their parents weren't, around because they were always focused on money, and that was part of the of what they were missing out on too. But in either way, it becomes this thing of going, if I don't create this pattern of keeping everything in a level of control, if I don't set things up so that I have everything in control and everything is in order and everything is practically set up, then what's going to happen to me is I'm going to go through some traumatic experience. And that's going to make me really upset inside of myself. And I don't want that to happen. So I better make sure that I organize things perfectly. But by doing that, the person's inviting that very trauma into the equation, because you can't keep a control on life. And usually when you're keeping a control on life, you're repressing all of your emotions. Go ahead.
Right. This is because Rahu is into the emotional Cancer sign.
Yes, to a certain degree. Yeah, and we're going to go more deeply into that. So basically, what will happen is the person, in order to keep everything structured, they end up repressing all of their emotions. They're not fulfilling their needs emotionally, right? So then, what will happen with that is Rahu will generally come into the equation, create an experience in the person's life, and make their entire structure come collapsing down, so that they have to confront all those emotions that they've been suppressing. Right? If you follow what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So when it boils down to it, what Rahu is trying to teach them is it's trying to say, okay, you've become very effective, or you've learned a lot about practically adapting your life to keep things secure and stable. But you equally need to learn how to not emotionally repress, but emotionally adapt to circumstances. Right? So you need to emotionally adapt to things so that sure, like if you're at work and like you hear some really bad news, right? Then you're not going to have an easy time like breaking down crying at work, right? You're just going to go, no, I can't do that here.
You have to be.
But yeah, so you have to find ways of processing emotions healthily within that structure that you're trying to create. How can you at the same time allow yourself to stay in touch with your emotions and what you really need, not just what you feel like you have to have in your life? And so people with Ketu and Capricorn, they become very intensively structured on what do I need to do to make everything work out okay? But they're needing to learn it's not just about making everything work out okay. It's about being able to adapt when things don't work out okay.
Oh, so much goes down with Rahu and Ketu.
It does. It's the complex that each individual is going through. And here's an interesting thing. Before we go into the house placements, here's something interesting you can do. First of all, you look at the house that Ketu is in. So you were thinking of a house. Tell me what house you were thinking of.
7th.
Okay, so let's say Ketu is in the 7th, right? In Capricorn. Okay.
Oh.
I need a relationship for my life to be stable and secure, and for everything to be okay, and for me to feel okay in my life, I need to have a relationship. And so I'm going to work hard on keeping that relationship in my life. I'm going to structure things this way, and I'm going to structure things that way, and I'm going to, be very authoritarian in making sure my relationship stays secure. But nobody's needs are being met in that relationship, because it's all about how the relationship is structured. You see? So the person's going, my relationships must be structured this way. And so it'll play itself out in relationships. So then, say for instance, you had, let's figure out a good place to put. Let's say you had Saturn in the in Capricorn. No, not in Capricorn. Let's say you had Saturn in Sagittarius. Okay. So that person has Saturn in the 12th house from Ketu.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
And let's say that they are a Gemini ascendant, right?
Okay.
Okay. Horoscope. So Saturn's in the 7th from the ascendant, and it's in the 12th from Ketu. So what that means is the person's relationship will eventually dissolve. They'll lose the relationship. That's what's going to happen. There will be separation from the relationship. And so why is that separation coming in? Well, that separation is coming in because of Rahu in the first house. It's going, you know yourself really well within relationships, but you always try to structure your relationships in a certain way because you think that's going to provide you with security. But you're never going to be secure until you become secure within yourself. And to do that, you need to emotionally adapt to being in an environment without a relationship so that you can understand that. So they'll go through the Rahu and Cancer experience in the first house. And within that Rahu and Cancer experience in the first house, they may go through some emotional difficulty, but they're going through that emotional difficulty so they can learn who they are. And they're going on a quest and a journey to figure out who they are. But because they are so intensively identifying with the people and experiences in their life, just one moment, then they will identify. Like, for instance, they go, well, I'm going to leave my relationship and go become an astrologer. They'll become so intensively focused on astrology because they'll think that they are astrology until they learn, no, you're not astrology. You're a person who is becoming an astrologer. And so then they'll try to identify with everything they attach to. What were you going to say? Sorry.
When Ketu is into the 7th house, when Ketu is into the 7th house, and what is the in a Capricorn particularly I'm talking about. So what is the Ketu element it is bringing in? Like the order and the discipline is Capricorn, the Rashi part of it, right? Yeah. But what exactly the element of Ketu is coming in when it's in the house? What exactly it does with the house?
With the house, yeah. Well, it means that the person has this belief that they have to have a relationship in their life. If you follow, right? But that's an incomplete experience of life. Okay. You know, you can't always expect a relationship to be there. And so then when something's not going well in the person's life, like say for instance, they go through that experience with Rahu and Cancer, where they're going, yeah, I went to try to explore and figure out who I was by becoming a therapist or by becoming an accountant or something like that. And then I quickly discovered that, you know, I wasn't interested in that. Then the next thing they're going to do is go, I need to go find a relationship because that's what's going to make me feel comfortable. You see? Yeah. But really what they're needing to learn is to be as comfortable within a relationship as they are outside of it.
Okay. Okay. So let me check my understanding. So if I have Ketu, if I have Ketu in the 10th house, so
in Capricorn.
Okay, let's take it in.
Or you can pick anywhere. You can pick anywhere.
Let's say it's into the sign of Sagittarius.
Sagittarius. Ooh, that's a fun one.
in the 10th house. So is it like when they have issues in their workplace, they go for the family? They go for the 4th house,
family, or whatever 4th house. I generally find 2nd house works out better as family, but I know some people use 4th house too. But they will definitely go for those 4th house things. The reason they're going for those 4th house things and understanding Ketu better, here's a good way to kind of get it, right? Rahu and Ketu within the royal court of planets are the army, okay? But Ketu is the part of the army that protects the domain, right?
Yes.
Ketu means flag. So flag, you put a flag on what you have conquered, right?
Yes.
Because you know
Dwaj.
that. You can map that land out well. You know that land pretty well. Rahu
Yes.
represents that part of the army that has to go out in the harsh conditions and fight all the battles,
Yes.
right? But eventually they're
Wow.
bringing that land back to the kingdom. You see what I'm saying? So
Yes.
K2, when there's a difficult experience with K2, the K2 thing that it's doing is it's going, yeah, okay, well, I've got this, this protected domain, but I'm needing something more in my life. I'm needing something more, and my life is going to be empty until I go explore that other thing.
So all the Rahu things ultimately become Ketu.
You will always go back and forth between it, which is why when
Oh, this is
people
frustrating.
it is, but it's not if you think about it. Here's the thing,
Yes.
because we see life as being related to what we're gonna get. Okay, it's like
Yes.
what am I gonna get? And life isn't just about that. What you're gonna get eventually after however many lifetimes is enlightenment.
Yes.
But you're not focused on that. You're focused on, am I getting that job? Am I getting that
Yes.
car? Am I getting
Yes.
this relationship? When
Yes.
ultimately all that God cares about is, are you going to get enlightened at some point? And
Wow.
so what will happen is we'll go through these K2 Rahu experiences throughout our life, but it's good knowing what those are about because it gives you awareness while you're in it. But having that awareness doesn't stop it. It still happens. But what it does is having that awareness takes you deeper and deeper into the lesson so that you can grow and so that you can be more whole. And you do become more aware of it and it becomes easier. And generally, by the time we reach our mid 40s, it's
It
much
settles
easier,
down.
honest.
It settles
Well,
down.
yeah, because that's when the nodes mature, you see, and so we know what that's all about. It doesn't
Wow.
stop us from still going, gee, it's been this way my whole life. I'd really like for it to be different. We still have that to a certain degree, but we understand it's like this because of this, really. And I
Wow.
can, be okay with that to an extent. But you were talking K2 and Sagittarius. That's an interesting to me because this is something that a lot of people don't know about Sagittarius, which is that if you think about it, right? So we're going to come back to your 10th house placements you were talking about, but I'm going to talk about the 10th house in a different way now. So the 10th house in the horoscope is that point at the time the person was born that's directly overhead. It's like
Isn't
the
it?
zenith. Yeah, exactly. So Capricorn is the natural 10th house of the zodiac. Okay. Sagittarius is the 12th from the 10th because it's the ninth. So Sagittarius represents a fall from a height.
Oh.
So with people with this placement, they usually go through an experience of going, I had this in my life, or I had that in my life, and I lost all of it. I fell from grace with my family. I had this nice, prestigious position, and I lost it, right? Or I had this K2 in the 10th, I had this really nice job, only I lost it. But there's something else that's deeper that's going on with that. Okay, because the K2 in Sagittarius dynamic is a K2 in Jupiter position. So
Right.
when there's a K2 Jupiter connection like that, purpose becomes very important. And these individuals will feel, and rightfully so, right? They'll feel that I'm here to do something different than what everybody else does. I'm here, I have a special purpose, and there's something that I'm here to do. And I can feel it, I can taste it. I know that that's really there, is that I have this special purpose, right? And I have this special career that I'm supposed to do. Where they get into trouble, though, is they don't like to follow the natural laws of success, so to speak. Okay.
Okay.
Because if their purpose is special, then
Oh.
everything else that they're hearing from everybody else about the way to make their life more secure, fourth house, and to make their life more stable, that's just a bunch of rubbish because really they're meant to do things differently. Go
They
ahead.
have Ketu in the Sagittarius.
Yeah.
This is separating and restricting them from getting advice, which is the
It's Rahu.
Jupiterian
It's
thing.
Rahu. Well, no, it's Rahu in a Mercury sign, which is about following rules. So they don't want to follow rules or dictates that anybody else might come up with, because they're not the one coming up with the idea. And so in order for it to have a special purpose to them, they need to be the one who's coming up with the plan. What they can eventually do, though, this is the way, is they can, so people will give them advice. Like their friends may go, oh, well, why don't you try doing this? And they'll just go, oh, no, 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 that'll never work. That'll be their first response.
Right. Because it
will never work. I just doubt that that'll work. It's not going to work.
Because it has not come, because it has not come from their own, because it has not come.
Yeah, because their perspective on life is that they're here to do something special, and it has to be in their own unique way, right? The only thing is because that Sagittarius, that way of relating usually brings a fall into their life. Right? So, you know, they keep trying to reach this height which they can't reach, or this special purpose which they can't reach in terms of their career. And it's because they won't follow the guidelines that will create the stability or security in their life. And part of those guidelines also relate to the concept of the fact that they can become so intensively focused upon what their purposeful career is, that they won't allow any enjoyment into their life. You know, people will come along and go, oh, well, why don't we go out and do this? No, I have to focus on this because this is what I'm meant to do. And then they end up being unhappy. And so Rahu will also pull them in the direction of going, yeah, you need to go explore more of your emotional security too. Yeah, exactly. And so it's this never-ending thing that goes on there. So the best way is to understand, because people always go, how is my Rahu Dasha going to play out? Well, it will play out in a multitude of ways, same with Ketu. But things to look at is to go, okay, so what Rashi is, let's say we're looking at Rahu. What Rashi is Rahu in? All right, so let's say we've got Ketu in the 10th. That means the ascendant is Sagittarius, okay? Rahu's in the 4th. So tell me where Mercury is.
Mercury is into the 11th house.
Mercury is in the 11th house. So Mercury is in Capricorn. Okay? So Mercury is in Capricorn.
Or shall we take it some, shall we take some other sign?
No, it's fine. No, it's fine.
Okay.
That's perfect. Yeah. So so Mercury is in the 11th house. That means it's in the 11th from the ascendant, and it's in the 8th from Rahu. So most likely that person will go, right, I've got this vision, because the 8th and the 11th are very visionary houses. I've got this vision of my special purpose and how it should be, right? But every time I try to fulfill it, things don't work out, and I find myself in the position of having to rely upon my peers, even though I didn't want to take their advice in the first place. Or I have to rely upon my eldest sister to kind of bail me out of the situation, because that's another, or, you know, my elder brother. It's another 11th house thing, you know. So the 8th and that will be the areas of the dynamics where things will play out, and it's a very easy way to predict what's going on with that.
Do we have time for the couple of questions?
We've got about 10 minutes, yeah.
Okay. So can you explain, can you tell me about the Rahu Dasha? It is not always scary, right? Rahu can give you huge success. So
it can, but it can also take that success away from you very easily.
Okay. So what is your experience when you do consultations? What is your experience while doing and dealing with this?
What things happen most, or
as in what exactly you look for in consultations about Rahu and Ketu, and what exactly people are looking for when they come to you, and how you help them?
Generally, when people come to me and they're in their Rahu dashas, it's generally that they're coming to me because they're confused and they can't figure out what on earth is going on. As a matter of fact, I would say the majority of people who contact me are in Rahu dasha or Ketu dasha. And then that's the majority of the clients that I deal with. What I generally do with people is I do something called a karmic analysis, and that's something that's included in my intensive consultation. And I also have something called the Karmic Analysis consultation. And what that does is it lets us look at all the influences to Ketu and Rahu. And I do that in a couple of different divisional charts, which cover the main body of the karma, so to speak, so that the individual can have an understanding of what they're supposed to work with. But I'll do all sorts of things. I'll look at the dispositors of Ketu and Rahu. I'll look at how strong or how weak those are. I'll look at where they're placed from Ketu and Rahu and where they're placed from the ascendant. I'll also look at the nakshatras Ketu and Rahu are in.
Wow.
If I'm looking at it in Vargas, I'll incorporate the Varga deities, and I'll do all those things to give a person an understanding of, like, you know, this is why this pattern keeps playing itself out. As a matter of fact, if anybody comes to me for any problem, I may not take an in-depth look at Ketu and Rahu, but generally in every single consultation, I'm looking at the nodes because I want to know how the person's natural approach to the situation is, which is generally a sign as to what's getting them in trouble in the first place. Exactly. If you know what I mean. Yeah.
I have two more questions, like regarding the conjunctions of planet with Rahu and Ketu and nakshatra. What would you like to take? We have only 5-10 minutes remaining, right?
I'll tell you something really simple about Ketu and Rahu, which is something that's really profound to understand. And the last time we had a discussion, we spoke about the kingdom of the nakshatra.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
And so you'll find that the nakshatra that Ketu is in, the kingdom of that, has been the approach to life that the person's been most accustomed to. So, like, for instance, if they have Ketu in a Jiva nakshatra, right? They're accustomed to trying to dominate the situation, right? I need to be the leader in this. Even if that Ketu's in Revati, it just does it in a nicer, friendlier, gentler type of way, but it's still very similar.
Does the same thing.
Exactly. And so then what they're needing to integrate is whatever Rahu's nakshatra kingdom is. Like, let's say it's in a Dhatu nakshatra. So the person's like got Ketu in a Jiva nakshatra, and they're used to being in charge and leading, but they never feel that they're getting the level of support that they need, because that's Rahu in the Dhatu nakshatra going, I'm not being supported, because Dhatu nakshatras are the mineral kingdom, and mineral kingdom needs to learn how to be strong and steady and stable and how to be a support to other people. And generally the crisis with those people is, you know, I'm not getting the level of support that I need. So that's what I look at with the nakshatras. And what was your other question? But I look also at the other indications of
nakshatras and conjunction of planets. Like if somebody has Rahu and Mars, Rahu and Moon, Saturn and Ketu.
There's a lot of different things. I would say one of the most difficult placements for the nodes is with Mars. Okay, especially Rahu with Mars, right? Generally, when people have actually either Ketu with Mars or Rahu with Mars, they generally tend to attract conflict to themselves, and they don't know why. They're not trying to. They just always find themselves in conflict, because those connections are trying to teach the person how to work with their Mars more effectively, right? How to use your will healthily. So if Ketu's with Mars, then generally the person's going to suppress their will. They'll have these like dreams, ideals, visions. They'll go, wow, one of these days I'm going to do this, you know, because I really want to do this, but they never do it, because they'll they'll kind of go, I really want to be bold and be strong and do this, but they generally won't do it. They'll suppress that. When Rahu's with Mars, then the person tends to need struggle in their lives to learn how to bring Mars back into a healthy balance, where the person's going, no, if I feel a natural impulse for something, I need to follow it. I need to not suppress it, because this suppression that I've gone through is what's bringing this tendency to build up and release. And anytime that build up and release comes into the equation, it happens with a power struggle with another person, because really it's happening with the power struggle within the individual who's going through it, and they just think it's with another person.
So do you have any final piece of advice for the people who are watching right now?
Yeah, well, in terms of Rahu and Ketu, I would say if you would like to know a little bit more about the nodes in your chart, you can schedule a consultation with me. As I was saying earlier, I have the intensive consultation and the karmic analysis. In terms of how to work with the nodes across the board, one thing to remember is you can't control Rahu and Ketu, right? It's not like you're going to control them. Best thing to do is to make it easier on yourself and go along for the journey. Just go, I'm just here for the journey. What do you want to show me? What do you want to teach me? Because the moment you think you have it figured out is the moment one of those nodes will come in and go, nope, time to go to a different level with
But if I know
you do have it figured out, we need to go deeper.
But if I know the challenge, can I work around with these nodes and can make them
You
work?
can't control them. You can't control them because their job is to bring you to awareness. And so what they're doing, they're not working against you when that happens. You can know with awareness what they're about. You can do it. It will make your life better. But then what it will do is it'll go, okay, you did a pretty good job with that. Good. You did a pretty good job. But now let's go on to the next lesson with this. Let's go deeper. And let's go deeper.
Okay.
Yes. Right? Because they're trying to untie that knot within you. We see them as being like these horrible forces who are just ruining our life. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to go, no, I'm going to make you stronger. And, for those who know the concept of Western astrology and for those who know the concept of Vedic astrology, both, it's interesting because you'll find Rahu will behave a lot like Pluto, where it will go, I want you to learn this, but I'm going to make it absolutely impossible for you to learn it. I want you to do this, but I'm going to make it impossible for you to do that. But I still want you to do it in the first place.
You will take the decision not to learn it. I'll create circumstances that you yourself will decide that.
Yes, exactly. Right. And so they're really profound in the horoscope. Very profound.
Okay. Yes. Thank you, Michael, for coming to my channel and sharing your knowledge. Last time you shared about Tarakaraka, and this time you enlighten us with Rahu and Ketu. Thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure, and thanks for having me on.
Yes. Namaste.
Take care of yourself.